Hello, everyone. Today, we welcome you all to our another episode. In fact, an inspiring and exciting episode of Empower Her Voices. And today, we are here with our episode 10, and we are going to explore about something really interesting and something that most of the people are not aware of in detail, or there's some misconceptions attached to it. So we will be talking about how we can actually explore infinite possibilities through neurodiverse minds, how to ensure to have a safe psychological working environment, and then how you can lead with change by actually understanding different dynamics attached to it. So for that, we are really honored that we have an amazing guest with us today, and Kylie Leota. She has more than 20 years of experience in leadership, neurodiversity, ADHD, and high performance leadership. She's also a transformational leadership expert, and she has authored a very amazing book which is worth reading, Infinite Leadership. She's an executive coach and speaker as well, and creating impact in different organizations, for individuals, for companies, and she is an advisor to numerous CEOs, boards, and school principals. And the best part is that she's empowering teams and individuals to actually unlock their true potential, which is actually the need of the hour. And she's the director at Elements for Success, what it is all about. We are going to hear it from her side. And she's leading change with neuro affirming leadership. What it is, Kylie is going to tell us. So, Kylie, welcome and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I'm really much sure about this thing. You have a pretty busy schedule, but still you took time out and you're supporting us for this cause. So we are really grateful to you.
Oh, Pfizer, thank you so much for having me as a guest on your podcast. I always have so much admiration for podcast hosts. People don't understand what it goes into behind the scenes to make something so impactful and so powerful. So thank you so much for taking the time and accepting me as a guest on your show today.
Great, great. Likewise. So, Kylie, before that, we are going to talk about your amazing professional journey in which you are creating an impact. We would like to know a bit about your town where you're living, about the people, about the culture, just a bit about your hometown.
Yeah, so I live in Brisbane, Australia, which Australia is a very, very multicultural city. And I live just down the road from one of the biggest high schools in Brisbane. And my son's just finished year 12 there. And there's nearly 4,000 students at that school, but probably over 60 different nationalities. So within that, so we have a very diverse community. Australia has one of those funny kind of things. We're kind of a relaxed culture. But we also have very, very big opinions on things at different times, I guess, in
Right.
the world. And so, in some areas, I think we're ahead of certain, communities, and others, I still think we're behind. And we've got long way to go. Brisbane, compared to places like Sydney and Melbourne in Australia, Brisbane's always been considered a bit of a sleepy town. But I think over the last couple of years, we've got the Olympics coming up in 2032. So things are growing, pace is picking up. And in actual fact, it's just as busy here sometimes as it is when you go to some of those other bigger cities in Australia. What I love about Brisbane is it's still a bit more of a laid back culture. So it's a bit more relaxed, a bit more informal, and we can have some of those conversations rather than everything being business all of the time. And one of the things that I love is that we're taking time to build capacity in our young leaders, because that's part of our legacy is, we've got to focus on what we leave behind and having that sustainable impact rather than just focusing on the here and now.
Great. So it's more about that you people can have heart to heart conversations rather than just focusing on something business, business, and business, right? It's amazing to know, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, Kylie, your leadership journey spans over 20 years. So, how do
Mm.
you first realize the importance of neurodiversity in leadership, and what exactly motivated you to create spaces where neurodiverse individuals, particularly women, can thrive?
Yeah. So it was a really funny story. I actually never set out to be a leader. I was always a very passionate educator.
Mhm.
When I was growing up and going through school, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a music teacher, but apparently you need musical talent for that. I wanted to be in the 90s in Australia. Everyone wanted to be a physical education teacher, a sport teacher. It was a very cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And then I had this experience of going in and working with kids with disabilities. And it was one of the most eye-opening experiences ever. And part of it was that society still, back in the 90s and even today, I think, still underestimate the positive impact that people with disabilities can have. And certainly culturally, it's not always been accepted. Many countries, including our own, have a really poor history of how we navigate and treat people with disabilities. But what I saw was an opportunity to showcase strengths and also showcase what was possible rather than what was limiting. So I went into an education career with this idea of wanting to have an impact and change for people with disabilities, and then realized pretty quickly that I couldn't get the change I needed unless I got higher up in the hierarchy. So it wasn't that I intended to be, I didn't go out and go, oh, I want to be a leader someday. I want to have an impact and I want to have change. And how do I do that? I can't get the impact here. So where do I go? Because people need a voice, people need a safe space, and people need people that can speak up when they've lost their voice. So I moved up the hierarchy and into the leadership. And it's really difficult. Still, I think, one of the things I get really surprised about is some of the conversations we're having in 2024 about women in leadership are still some of the same conversations we're having back then. Leadership hasn't been an easy journey for women. It hasn't been easy journey for anyone that might be considered neurodiverse. And when I'm talking about neurodiversity, it's those that may think differently. So we would think about things like ADHD or autism, or even things like dyslexia, dysgraphia, things that make people think a bit differently. And the Richard Branson, who is the owner of Virgin Airlines, is well known as being diverse because he has dyslexia, and he's celebrated for the creativity of his mind and how it works, and it makes him a very creative thinker. But we still have limits that are placed on that. So I wanted to be a passionate advocate and an ally for people that needed that support in that journey, not only for women in leadership, but people that are neurodiverse in leadership, and also just in general, being passionate about what that needs to do to create and build capacity for people to be the best version of themselves.
Great, great. So, Kylie, I totally agree with you, because even still, we have stepped into 2025, and still there are challenges. There are biased attitudes attached when it's about women being in leadership. And it's very unfortunate. But on the other end, what is fortunate is that people like you are actually working on the portals and platforms where exactly women can thrive and they can actually do what they want to. And you're right that change can, obviously the impact and change can be created once you're there in the decision making process. Only then you can make things happen. That's like very well said. So kind of talking about neurodiverse mind, obviously we will be needing the detail what exactly it is. So psychological safety is crucial for leaders, right? Especially for
Yeah.
young women who may fear judgment. So what are some practical steps women in leadership can take to ensure that their teams feel safe to speak up and motivate?
Yeah, so within psychological safety, what we know is that there's 4 sort of levels within psychological safety. And the very first part of it is inclusion. I feel like I belong here. I feel like I belong in this conversation. I feel like I belong in this meeting. I feel like I belong in this room. I feel like I belong in this team and organization. So as young leaders, for ourselves, what we need to do is we have to be really self-aware about what will make us feel comfortable, to feel like accepted and belonging in that. And then equally, we need to be socially aware of how we might make others feel, because we may not intend to make people feel left out, but sometimes through the way that we communicate, we can isolate people that we don't necessarily intend to. So we have to be aware that we can have that impact. The second level is about learner safety. We recognize in school that we want children to have a go and try, and that the way that they learn is they're going to make a mistake and then they correct it and then they're going to keep moving forward. But we don't often give that same compassion to adults. We expect everyone to have it done the first time, the first time, but we don't always check for clarity of understanding, working through the problem, and actually recognizing that sometimes failing can be a good thing because that's part of the problem solving process and it's a resilience. So how do we create a culture of have a go, see how it goes, and what did we learn from that, both for ourselves? And I think particularly women in leadership, we put ourselves under enormous amounts of pressure to not make mistakes because we're worried about being judged. But what if we gave ourselves the same compassion and kindness that we might give to our peer or our teammate that says, well, you had a go at it, didn't work out, you tried your best, what else can we do? And a much more compassionate lens.
True.
The third level of psychological safety is contribution safety. How do we make sure that people's contributions are seen as valued? And we want to make clear that this is not about getting your own way all of the time, that everything I say you should accept, but it's about making people feel seen, heard, and valued. And how do I do that for myself? What do I know works for myself? But how can I do that for others? And then the fourth part, and I always caveat that if we want true, authentic psychological safety, we have to have all four levels. We can't do one of them well. We have to do all of them well. And the fourth part is around challenger safety. How do I challenge something that you said without being worried about losing my job or worried about damaging my reputation or worried about that? How do I bring that up? And one of the things that I always ask when I'm coaching people is, how often in organizations do we ask people, we talk about giving feedback all of the time, but we don't ever often check in and say, hey, Pfizer, if I've got some feedback to give you, what's the best way to receive that feedback that you're going to be able to hear it and process it and take it on board? Because the ultimate goal of feedback is to improve an outcome, right? So if I've got to adjust the way I deliver that feedback so it's easier for you to process, then why don't we sit there and go, Pfizer, I've got some feedback for you. And we just expect people to take it, but we don't actually take the time to sit there and say, well, how would you like that? So if I've got something that's maybe hard for you to hear, what would be the best way for me to sit down and have that conversation with you? Because I need to be able to challenge you in a way that you can hear me and know that I'm coming from a place of care because I'm wanting things to change, not that I'm judging you or that there's, that I'm worried about, losing my job or, and that's what I think women in leadership really struggle with, particularly in certain cultures. We know that it's been not okay to challenge authority, particularly if it's been male authority. So we have to practice it, start practicing it where it's safe first. And then, don't go into an unsafe space straight away. Start to build up those safe spaces and then gradually increase. And it's like anything. How do you get better at anything? It's a practice. So, hey, I would like to practice this idea that I've got, or I'd like to practice my idea of valuing this contribution. Would it be okay if I shared my thoughts on this? And start practicing those different conversations and how to do that. And over time, you'll get better at it. You're never going to be perfect the very first time you do anything, even though we seem to think and expect that we should be. So how do we, compassionately give ourselves that space? It's like putting a boundary in place. Often when we're learning boundaries, we often mess it up the first couple of times as we're learning. So, it could be, hey, I'm trying to practice something. Would it be all right if I had a go and see how we go? And you can give me some feedback on that. So, but start with places that feel safe for you. I think that's really key when we're developing these skills around psychological safety.
Yeah, that's very well said. And I can relate to this when you're saying that, in leadership positions, generally what women are facing at times, they want to take decision, they want to take step, but just because of the fear of being judgment or being judged, they can't. But you have very well said that it's all about, so so what I've assumed is that it's about embracing your own individuality while stepping into it.
Yeah.
Is that so?
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the things that we underestimate is self-awareness and then self-management. So self-awareness is, oh my gosh, I feel really overwhelmed when this happened, or I felt really angry in that meeting when somebody said something. So that's self-awareness. I can recognize how I'm feeling. Self-management is what you do about that feeling. So you can either withdraw or hide, or you could say, look, I actually need to have a conversation with Kylie about this
Mm.
because it's making me feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, but the best way is, I know from
Mm.
observation, or Kylie's told me that,
Yeah.
in my household, I talk about I'm a much better morning person than I am a night
Mm.
person. So at my house, I said, tell my kids, don't come to me at 8 o'clock if you want me to make a decision.
Okay.
So if if
Right.
if I was in a leadership position, and I had said that, don't come to me after 4 p.m. in the afternoon for me to make a really high impact decision, you're not
Yeah.
going to get a really good outcome. So if I know that about me, my self-management is, hey, I need to have a conversation with Kylie. Oh, it's 4:30. I'm going to say to her, hey, Kylie, can I check in with you in the morning? Can I have a conversation with you? Because she's already told me that mornings are a better time for her.
Mm.
So that's the understanding, the interplay between our own needs and what feedback other people are giving us to get the best
Right.
outcome. Because nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to do a bad job. I
True.
don't know
True.
anybody that lays in bed and goes, oh, how can I do a terrible job today?
No one would want to. Yes, exactly.
But
I
because
agree.
when we're overwhelmed, we can miss some of those cues, both
Mm.
within ourselves and our own self-awareness, but being able to read, maybe, people aren't recognizing that you're feeling stressed today, or you've got a lot on your plate because people are a little bit consumed about what their priorities are. So how do we manage both self and social awareness and management to get the best outcome for everybody? And that's a lot
Thank
about
you.
emotional
Yeah,
intelligence.
thank you so much, Kylie, because these two things, what you have mentioned in a very, very good explanatory way, that, about self-awareness and self-management, and then being embracing yourself and acknowledgement. So I can see the correlation which you have beautifully narrated with examples, so we can also implement it into our professional life. That's really true. So, Kylie, what's one trait that you think is non-negotiable for women leaders who are navigating change, and how can they use this trait to lead their teams through transformations?
Yeah, I was trying to pick which one was just one, because I think there's a few, but I
I'm
always go back to the fact that our own identity often impacts how our ego shows up into these meetings. So I think one non-negotiable trait is understanding your current identity and your
Yeah.
aspirational identity, and maybe
Right.
the identity of your teams. And so if your identity is caught up in certain things, that's going to impact how you show up as a leader. And so I think we need to be really aware. And I
Mm.
think one of the things that can happen sometimes, particularly as women leaders, is that we can create an identity or take on an identity from a story that somebody else gave us. So, women
Mm.
leadership, if you stand up and are a strong advocate, you might be seen as aggressive or pushy or something
Mm.
else. So, that's somebody else's story about who you are.
Mm.
But we can, as women, absorb that and take that on and go, oh, people think I'm bossy or pushy or whatever that
Yeah.
is. Whereas understanding ourselves is really key to that process, and going, well, what I choose to be is I choose to be kind and compassionate. My values are these are the kind of qualities I have in my own identity. And the reason that that's so important is often other people's behaviors will trigger a response in us.
Yeah.
And so, how do we walk in alignment with who we want to be, as opposed to giving away our power to somebody else? Is when we are not aware of how our own identity shows up, including our values, our strengths.
Mm.
And so, we have to be really grounded in who we are. And I
Yeah.
don't think we're taught that very well. I think we are taught as women to be quiet. I think we're taught as women to be people pleasers. Our job is often in life, by role of being a woman, is it's more about being subservient to the rules, the organization, or whatever, versus challenging anything. But if we've got really strong values, and one of my values is integrity,
Mm.
so I can recognize now, if I'm being put in a position through a
Mm.
meeting or a situation or in a conversation, even, where I feel like my integrity is being questioned or I'm being put in a position that's challenging my integrity, my identity recognizes that I'm going to move away from that situation because I don't want to walk out of alignment with who I am. And when we don't know ourselves, we kind of swing from one side to the other, and we can get really caught up with going along with something that later we feel a bit yuck about because we feel like we get trapped into a situation where we have to do this or do that. Whereas if we understand our identity, and we can do this compassionately, say, thank you so much for the opportunity to join in this team. I'm not sure it's going to serve where I'm going right now, because I know who I am and where I want to go, and I can foresee that team might put me in a position that might challenge some of that. You know, and we've all been in positions where we get a message and the first thing that we want to do is respond, react to that message and go, how dare they, or how dare you, or, how could you think that of me? But when you've got a really strong sense of identity, you can go, oh, that's causing a reaction for me there. I'm just going to pause for a minute and go, how do I want to react that's going to be in alignment with me, rather than allowing that other person's message, whether it be an email, whether it be a text, whether it be a message, to make you step out of alignment with who you are. So before I send a message anymore, I sit there and go, okay, if integrity is really important to me, this message that I initially wanted to send, does that come across as somebody that has a strong sense of integrity, a strong sense of compassion and care? No, it doesn't.
No.
But because I'm allowed myself to react to what they've said. But when I'm grounded in my own identity, I'm going to go, all right, so they've said this. Thank you so much for your message. I feel at this time we should stop the conversation right there. And when you're ready to blah, blah, whatever, I'm happy to re-engage in that conversation with you, because that's me showing up in alignment with who I am, not allowing that other person to dictate who I am by my reaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really great. So the way you've said that we should exactly know when to move away from a certain situation and how we are supposed to do it. So you've also shown us the way that if in case we feel that it's something not grounded with our reality or with our navigation, we should just step away. But then when people step away, they do it very abruptly and aggressively. But you have told us the way that this is how one can do it. And by
Yeah.
doing so, it will be a nicer way. Because whenever it's about exit or leaving away, it should be done very gracefully. And I guess this is, at the end of the day, this also comes into what you have already told about self-management and how you're going to, control
Yeah.
or manage your emotions. Yeah, that's really important. And there are, you're actually clearing step by step the misconceptions attached to these things. So, talking about this, if we're further going to take it in your experience, what's like the biggest misconception about neurodiversity in leadership, and how can women leaders actively work to break this stereotype and leverage neurodiversity as a strength?
Yeah. So I think the biggest misconception about neurodiversity is that it's a deficit. I think that's the biggest thing that is going around. And in actual fact, it is an amazing strength. So I always talk about everyone sees the world through a different lens. And it's about understanding that we have different perspectives on the world. And if we embrace those different perspectives, we know that the best teams and the best organizations are also the most diverse ones. But
Right.
one of the challenges with that is we like to communicate with people that think like us. We like to work with people that it's easy to work with because they already know and I don't have to explain. But we also know that we get the greatest growth and innovation from working with people with diverse perspectives. So if we are able to embrace diversity, whether it be neurodiversity or cultural diversity or gender diversity or any of those different things, we are going to get greater growth and innovation. But one of the things that I think we have to do better is teach people how to hold space for these different perspectives. So when I'm coaching, I talk about safe spaces for brave and courageous conversations, because to get the innovation and growth, we have to be brave and courageous to put our ideas out there. And your perspective of the world is the sum of your experiences, and my perspective of the world is the sum of my experiences. and the neurodiverse person is going to be something. So how do we hold? We've all got different experiences, no more or less valuable than each other. So how do we create a space for those perspectives to be heard? And you don't have to agree with everything, but we know that growth and innovation comes from considering perspectives different from the way that we think. So that's one of the things that I think is we need to practice more. And I think we have consistently seen neurodiversity as a deficit. And I think if we can embrace the strengths that neurodiversity bring. So, for example, one of the things that happens with ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or even ASD, is that people, they talk about having a special interest or a hyperfocus or something. But if you're doing something that you're really passionate about and you are all in on that, you are going to be the best person to do that job. So figuring out our roles and responsibilities to align to people's strengths is going to be the best way that we can embrace neurodiversity, but and diversity in general. You're going to have different strengths to me. I love people, and I will always put people above a process. But there are a lot of people that love a good process, and they love systems, and they love routines. I know that we need them. I would much rather do the people part of it. So I need people around me that can do the systems and the processes, and I need to be able to sit and hold space for that as well. Just like they need to sit there and go, well, now that we've got the system, how do we get the buy-in from the people? So that's where my strengths come in. So how do we hold space for that and work collaboratively together, and not see that as a competitive market, to see that as building things collectively together will, there's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we need to bring that, that idea that if we want to go far, we have to learn how to operate within our team with all of that and embrace those differences and see them as strengths and complementary to each other.
Yeah, that's very well said, and it's actually need of the hour as well. By nowadays, what we call it is this world is a global village. But if it actually is, and we actually mean it, then we really need to show tolerance. And then the best part that you have said, that it's about, be brave and courageous about accepting the difference of opinion, about different perceptions, because the way you have said that what you are perceiving about a certain thing is about the experiences that you have in your life, and same goes for me and for others. So so I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, tolerance is something which is really crucial in accepting diversity, may it be neurodiversity, cultural diversity, or any bit of it.
Yeah, and I think part of that tolerance is really compassion and kindness and
Okay.
acceptance.
Okay.
Tolerance kind of implies that we have to put up with something. But I think if we have compassion and kindness and acceptance that we're going to see the world differently, then we're more likely to increase our tolerance to diversity and difference. And that means that we're going to be able to embrace more growth and innovation, whether that be within our own growth and development, within that, whether it be our team or in our organization as a whole. And I think, we talk about the fact that if you interviewed 20 people that saw a car accident, everyone would retell the story differently about what they happened, right? So we have to understand that everyone's got a different perspective of how we see the world. And sometimes that perspective is going to be similar, and other times it's going to be very, very different. But how do we hold? And so perspective taking is something that I practice a lot, because we have to be able to understand. So tell me how you came to that decision. What was your thinking? Help me understand your perspective on that. So we've got some scripts. Instead of going, I don't agree with that, you're wrong. We need to actually go, well, can you help me understand? Or can you help me unpack your thinking around that, because I might have a different perspective on that. So then it's not about being right and wrong. It's around getting a bigger picture of where they're coming from to get to that decision. And I think when we focus on doing right, like getting it right versus being right, sometimes our ego gets in the way, right? And we just want to be right about something. So, but the outcome for the organization or for our team or for ourselves is getting it right is about being right with the decision that we make, not me, myself personally, having to be right all the time, because it makes someone the good guy and someone the bad guy. Different
Yeah.
perspectives is around that we all have value. Everyone has value, and everyone's perspective is important, and
True,
everyone's
true.
contribution. And that leads back to that psychological safety about contribution. Just because your vision and perspective is different to mine doesn't mean that your contribution is
Yes.
less worthy than mine.
True.
So I think, and the more we practice it, the better we get at it.
True, true. And the way you've said that, help me understand your perspective. These are all the things that I'm sure all of us who are working, or even for stay-at-home moms, or who are working outside
Yeah.
or having their entrepreneurial journey, it's all useful to them, and they can actually implement it in their daily life and can get the result out of it. So, Kylie, throughout your career, you have inspired so many to embrace their leadership potential. So, what's
Mm.
one piece of advice you would give to young women and girls who may be like hesitant to set up and lead, especially if they feel different or face challenges in the process, as you have already mentioned?
Yeah. So in my book, Infinite Leadership, the word infinite has 8 pillars. And so we talk about understanding identity, which we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
The N is for nurturing. So understanding our emotional intelligence, because often it's our lack of self-awareness and how we're impacting that stops us from doing things. But the F in infinite leadership is about fearlessness. And that doesn't mean, it means that it's not about not feeling fear at all. It's
Okay.
about the fact that how do we move through fear?
Okay.
And in actual fact, there's this story about Native American buffalo. So they're the only animal that when a storm is coming, they actually run towards the storm. Every other animal runs away from the storm. And the story goes that the reason that they run towards the storm is not because they like storms, but they recognize that the faster you run towards it, the more likely you are to get to the other side of it. And I think fear is the same thing. We try and avoid and we try and run away from our fear, and it kind of becomes all consuming. So the faster we can identify what that fear is, put a name on it, I think, then we can deal with it, and we're running towards the storm, and we're going to get through that to the other side a lot faster. And I think one of the other things that I have realized in my leadership career is that we talk a lot about fear of failure. And I think that's well documented, and there's lots of information out there. But there's another side of stuff, and that's fear of success. And what will my family think of me if I get that promotion and then I have to work more? And how do I balance being a mum and being a leader? And how do I, oh my gosh, I'm now in a higher position than my partner. Um, are they going to, are they going to feel less than because I'm doing this? So we actually can sometimes hold ourselves back, self-sabotage ourselves unconsciously, because success might change the way other people perceive us, and we worry about that. In Australia we have a saying, and I don't know how global it is, but we have a thing about tall poppy syndrome. And what tall poppy syndrome is when people start to do really well, somebody has to come along and say, well, who do you think you are to be so great? Or, so we try and cut people down to size, and it's not necessarily a good attribute, but because we feel like people should come back to the middle and be the same as everybody else. So if you stand out and you start being successful and start leading, then sometimes we hold ourselves back because we don't want to be that person up there, because what other people might, our friends, our family, our community might judge us for thinking that we think that we're better than other people, which is not true. Often our wanting to be a leader comes from a place of service to others, but it can make us stand out more. And I think people shy away from that. So understanding our fears, and there's lots of different, so in the infinite, we've got influence, nobility, which is about service leadership, innovation, transformation, and ecosystems. Are we surrounding ourselves with the right people? Are the people that we're surrounding ourselves helping build us up? Or every time we try and take that step in the right direction, are they trying to drag us down a little bit? So understanding that there's lots of different elements, but what I love about this model of infinite leadership that I've created is you can kind of look at the big picture, all of those pillars all at once, or you can just pick one to work on. And you might go, okay, right now I'm going to work on who are the people in my world, and are they serving me in the right way to help, and they give me confidence and help build me up? Or are they people that drag me down? Or is it my influence part? Do I have to practice how I'm communicating and influencing others and how I'm creating psychological safety? Or is it my fear stuff? Or is it my identity stuff? So I think having a framework, and this is about having a good reflective practice. I think overarching this is, I don't know about schools in Pakistan, but we talk about study all the time. Like it's just, you should study, you should study, you should study.
True.
But we don't actually teach people how to study. We just say you should study. And reflection's the same thing. How do we teach people that they should have a good reflective practice that doesn't come with judgment? And reflection is around, how do I understand where I am right now without judging myself as a bad person because I'm not here, or, you know. So one of the things I think, if I was to say one attribute, is about having a strong reflective practice. And the Infinite Leadership book is works you through that, how within each of those different pillars, how to be reflective about those different areas of your life to keep moving forward. Because the idea of infinite leadership is it's an ongoing evolution of yourself, of your team, and of your organization. And it's around how do we keep evolving, ongoing. And so at each stage in your life, you can come back and go, well, in identity, who am I right now? 5 years down the track, who am I right now? Because they're going to be different. I'm not the same person I was last year to the person I was this year, you know.
True.
So we're changing all of the time. And if we can embrace that idea that it's a constant evolution and that it's an infinite learning journey, then we can embrace the idea that we can create infinite opportunities and infinite possibilities, because we're not limited by this belief that we're stuck, because we've got a process to be able to move ourselves forward.
Great, great. Kylie, thank you so much for sharing these worthwhile insights. And truly, it was an eye opener. Why? Because everything that you have said from the start till the end, that is 101% applicable in our professional life and the way we actually want to navigate ourselves. And at times, there were certain things which I am also clear after listening to you, that we were unable to, recognize the relationship or kind of connection between number of things. The way you have said that, about the reflective process, and then how you're going to link those perceptions with self management and self awareness. So you have actually narrated in a very easy and, less complex way, which is quite understandable
Yeah.
for everyone. So before that we wrap up, I would just want to, so you're the director at Elements for Success. So if you can
Yeah.
just tell a bit about what Elements for Success is and what is there for others in it, if somebody would like to approach. So just an overview of what exactly you're doing at this venture.
Yeah, so my company Elements for Success came about because there's a very old gentleman who was one of the original people in professional development, and he said, his name was Earl Nightingale, and he said that success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that definition of success, rather than you have to have $1 million or you have to have this fancy car or you have to have that. So I love that definition of success. And then I think for me, one of the things that came out of that was there's lots of different elements that make that up. And the elements that you might need to work on, it might be different to the elements that I need to work on. So that was the foundation of the name of the company. And what we offer at Elements for Success is we offer that transformation. So we do it for individuals, teams, organizations, and that's around each of those different ideas. So we can deliver speaker presentations, workshops, individual and executive coaching. So, and I think part of that is around, one of the things I really love about what we do is because those elements are quite personalized, we can tailor make them to your organization. So I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs. That's a little bit different to companies, to somebody who's an individual that really wants to do their own transformation piece. And so one of the things is really around creating that for that individual tailor-made experience, rather than going into oh, we do it this way and you kind of have to fit into the box. So I pride myself on out of the box thinking, and challenging your thinking to be a little bit more out of the box. So it's about those, like I said, creating safe spaces for brave and courageous conversations, whether that be through presentation, whether that be through virtual, workshops or face-to-face workshops, or in terms of that more intimate experience around coaching and that one-on-one experience and what that looks like. So we offer a variety of different offerings. We talk a lot about the infinite leadership model, but we can also talk about specific things. So considered conflict, how to fight well, I guess. A strong one on psychological safety, authentic accountability, rather than it being a bit of a punitive punishment type of thing, which a lot of accountability is. The power of feedback, but taking each of those individual pillars of infinite leadership and being able to apply that, whether it be on a one-to-one, small group, workshop, or presentation kind of level. We take all of it and implement it, because our goal is to have the greatest amount of impact at a global level to help and empower others.
Great. Thank you so much, Kylie. And the way you have said that, getting it right rather than being right, it will help you not just build your own self, but help build others as well. That's a very positive, very optimistic, I would not say perception, I would rather say a narrative. So it's about building the narrative around it. It's really worthwhile. And I'm sure that the women and the young girls who are going to watch this episode they'll get a lot. And we'll definitely go through your book. We'll be sharing the link. I'll get it from you, so that people who would like to have it, they can go and they can get the book from there. And Kylie, thank you so much once again for joining us, and for for your contribution in this cause, because this global conversation is meant to actually inspire women around the globe, not just for Pakistan but other countries as well. And people and leaders like you, your contribution means a lot to us, and we'll always remember and will always honor this. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be have the opportunity to share with your audience and to grow. And as I said, it's about empowerment and it's about having impact. And that's by getting the message out. That's how we do that, isn't it? So thank you to you for all of your hard work to make this happen for those in your audience as well.
Well, thank you so much. In fact, leaders like you are actually helping me proceed further, and there's a long way to go. So thank you. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching this episode. As there's a lot of, there are a number of takeaways from Kylie's worthwhile conversation, and they're like, everything is linked to which will lead you towards something. But the best bit is that she said that, success is actually an ongoing evolution of yourself. I really loved it. And it's not like a one stop that you have achieved ABC and you're done for that. No, you're not. So ongoing evolution is the best bit, that the takeaway for myself, and then getting it right rather than being right. That's like and it's really positive. It can help you in your professional and personal life both. So thank you so much for your time, and see you next week with another exciting episode. Till then, keep on embracing yourself and keep on helping others build their capacity. And while embrace yourself, as Kylie said, that it's more about embracing your authenticity and about your reality. Thank you so much.
Thank you.